Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson, and today's guest on CPG has over $4.2 million in live MTT cashes and is the founder of the charity series of poker, Matt Stout. Matt's origin story into the world of poker began as a 19-year-old college student and has taken him around the world. And not just for travel, but also for, living, as Black Friday forced Matt to seek out places where he could continue his online poker career. He's lived in spots like Costa Rica, Amsterdam, and Rosarita, Mexico. If you've ever been wondering or curious about living the life of a traveling online poker player, you're about to learn which of those locales was Matt's favorite and which one almost killed him. And like I say, pretty much in every single CPG intro, you're also going to learn example number 1021 of why I believe the poker world is chock full of amazing human beings who not only chase poker greatness, but also chase what it means to be a great human being as well. In today's conversation with Matt Stout, you're going to learn the events that led to Matt running charity poker tournaments for the Vegas Golden Knights, why college ended a bit early for Matt, and a hilarious story about paying his tuition, Matt's trials and tribulations dealing with the aftermath of Black Friday, and much, much more. Now, without any further ado, I bring to you an all-time great poker player who lives to serve his fellow man, the great Matt Stout. Mr. Stout, welcome to the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast, sir.
What's up? Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. And we've been having a pre-conversation. We've got a lot of things to get to over the course of this conversation. Typically, though, with this podcast, specifically, we start by talking about your journey through the world of cards. So to begin, state your age and tell me about how you got into the world of cards and all the fun life lessons and stories you've accumulated on the way.
How much time you got?
I got a lot of time. I got all the time.
All right. So the kind of cool way to put it is that I started playing poker when I was 4 years old because that's when my sister taught me how to play 5-card draw. But it's less relevant than during the moneymaker boom when I was in college. So around 2004 is when I just really started going headfirst into poker. And it's funny because this morning I was thinking a lot about how there was one specific AOL instant message that I can trace my entire career path back to. My buddy Nick Luisi sent me a message. He's like, "Yo, do you play cards?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You want to come over and play 25, 50 cent Hold'em?" I was like, What the hell did you just say? It was like Chinese. And I was like, and he was like, "Oh, it's poker." And I was like, "I'm in. I'll see you there at 8." So that night we played for 6 hours. And I remember specifically that I made $4.25, went to Wendy's, the only place still open, was eating a bunch of stuff off the dollar menu that I bought with other people's poker money. This is the greatest game ever. And so college just became my breeding ground for grinding poker stars and full tilt. And that was just kind of how things went from then on. I remember that I got fired from my campus bookstore job because a few months after I learned how to play, I was playing a $5 rebuy with a huge field and didn't realize that it was going to take all night. And I ended up final tabling and winning $1,000 and got to my job on literally no sleep because I started at 9 and it was 8 a.m. by the time I was finished with the tournament. And I got through the first half of my workday fine, and went home for lunch and just completely passed out in the middle eating a salad. Like, woke up like 3 hours later, walked into work, and they're like, "You're fired." And I was like, "Yeah."
Fair. Good call.
So it's tough, but it's fair. And honestly, my first thought was, well, that's fine because now I kind of have a role and I have more time to grind, and we'll be all right. I obviously I had no clue about bank clue at all, but go on.
Well, of course, you're in college. Tell me about the steps that you took in the beginning to learn about poker, immersing yourself. Did you gravitate towards books? Are you kinesthetic learner? Did you learn by playing? What did that look like?
I mean, it was a combination of books and playing. There weren't training videos back then, but there weren't equity calculators. None of that was around yet. We were in the beginning stages of people actually like writing decent books with real strategy. Like there was Super System and Harrington on Hold'em. Those were the ones that I started by reading. But I just saw that, I mean, a lot of people don't even understand who didn't play back then, but like no one had a clue what was going on. The good players were just like the players who had some kind of strategy and were even trying. Like you could kind of multi-table and watch TV and have 100% ROI in tournaments, like no problem, if you had any idea what you were doing. And it was, I mean, the getting was good. So after I quit my job, it was just studying a little bit mostly.
Let's use the air quotes for quit your job.
Oh, sorry, fired from my job. Definitely not quit. Like that was funny. That's the only time I was ever fired from a job. Quit. I mean, in my heart of hearts, like my body did what my heart wanted to do. Like it was like, if you just go to sleep right now, not only do you get to nap, but you get to play a lot more poker going forward. So I actually kind of built up like I think I got my roll up to like 7K while I was still 19 and a junior in college, and then dusted half of it off in a single session playing 5-10 on two tables, because that was how I thought bankroll management worked. I thought like you just buy in for 1K at 5-10 on two tables at a time while you have a roll of 7K, and that's your entire life work.
How did it feel, by the way, losing the 3.5K? Do you remember the feeling after that session?
I do. It was absolutely demoralizing, and it's like that was the moment where I learned bankroll management. I lumbered away from my computer defeated. Like the first two were like standard-ish hands, and then I just like tilted off a third buy-in, and then realized that I had just dusted off half my net worth, and just it was like 7:00, 7:30 at night, and I just went straight to bed. Like just fell face first in bed and didn't get up for like 12 or 13 hours. And then I went to the college in New Jersey, so we were like an hour and a half from Atlantic City, and I went to AC a few times, but then just got kind of paranoid. I was playing. That was actually one of the only times that I was like gambling. I didn't really play table games after I turned 21, but had been playing blackjack at Taj Mahal one day and got like death stared by a pit boss when I was 19, and was just like, all right, I'm not coming back. Like. And then managed to hold off till I was 21. So
why were you getting death stared? Underage?
Oh yeah, because I was 19 and I was clearly underage, and he just like stared me down and gave me the look of like, I know you're underage, like please leave.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that, as opposed to the let's get the law involved kind of way to go about it. So I just grinded a lot online, grinded every game I could find around my college, which were even softer than the online games, but everything was just beautiful back then. made enough to, pay for everything that I had to pay for, and kind of built up a few $1,000 roll. And then I turned 21. I was doing a double major in business and psychology. So I had 2 senior years because I had to do so many 400 level classes. And I turned 21 in the middle of the first senior year, my business senior year, and was back and forth to Atlantic City the entire finals week because my birthday was during finals week. I remember studying from the table while I'm grinding 1-2 in the nightly tournaments and stuff. Then I still did well on all my finals. Got to AC and just settled in for the entire winter break. Aside from like Christmas Day only, I went home to hang out with the family and then was straight back to AC. Spent 6 weeks down there. And
why was it so exciting to play poker? Why were you sucked in so hard to the poker world?
I mean, online it wasn't quite as appealing. Like I loved it, but I was still able to keep it together and get to enough of my classes. I was still missing some classes because I was too tired in the morning after playing all night and stuff. But it was the bright lights, the casinos, going out to restaurants every night. Like I grew up like not super poor, but like we certainly weren't just going to be able to like stay in hotels and go out to restaurants all the time. And it was the first time I got to kind of live that lifestyle. And so there was that allure, and just the fact that I felt like I had such an edge. And it was like anytime I was away from the tables, I feel like I was just passing on an opportunity to not only play a game I love and get better at it, but to bring money.
Mm-hmm.
So I got back to school, and I think I had spent most of my money. I actually got to Atlantic City with like 500 or $1,000 to start winter break, and had 7,000 by the end of winter break. Went back to school for my second semester of the business senior year, and was informed that they were missing a signature on one of my student loan paperworks, and as a result they hadn't gotten paid for the previous semester, and they unregistered me from all my classes. And they sent a letter to my house where I wasn't to inform me of this.
Oh boy.
They didn't bother calling my cell or anything. Like my cell was on file with the school. Any call about this, I would have made sure it was taken care of right away, because as much as I love the game and realized the opportunity, I was very serious about school and wanted to finish. I get back to school and I go to the registrar.
How did that happen? Like, what's the protocol?
If they don't get paid 50% or 51% or something, if they don't get paid at least half-ish of the previous semester, they won't let you enroll for the following semester. But I mean, it's pretty shitty to send one letter to my parents' house while I'm at the North Tower of Tropicana in Atlantic City.
Yeah, you'd think that they'd have more motivation to get paid. At least, call the person that can make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would have taken it very seriously. I'd have left Atlantic City and gone and handled it if I had to. Like, I was not going to let this happen. So to the point that I show up at the registrar's office, or whatever the hell you call it, and naturally I was a 21-year-old poker player and had my entire bankroll in my pocket. I wasn't going to put it in the bank. I just had to be ready to gamble at all times.
Mm-hmm.
I walk in there with $7,000 in my pocket, and they tell me that they hadn't gotten paid for the previous semester, but I live off campus. I had a partial scholarship. It's a state school. And basically I had to pay $3,500 to get the 50 or 51% paid for the previous semester. The look on their faces when I pulled it out of my pocket and paid it in cash is something I'll never forget. And so I hand over the cash immediately, and I was like, all right, how do I get back in my classes? They tell me I have to meet with the dean of the School of Business. I set up a meeting with the dean. He no-shows, and I wait a half hour in his office while he doesn't show up. I give up, go back to my dorm, and register. We don't have Wi-Fi back then. Everything's wired connection. So it's not like I can like walk around campus while I'm still in tournaments. So I go put in a session. I go back the next morning and they're like, oh, he's on vacation for 2 weeks. And like I was like, oh, cool. So he's the only guy who can sign me back into my classes. He no-showed me and then went on vacation and isn't answering my emails, calls, nothing. I decided to take a semester off, and I am currently still on that semester.
Did you get your 3,500 back?
No. I owed it to them for the previous semester.
Oh, the previous one.
So
Gotcha.
I ended up just figuring that out. And like when I paid off my car with my dad, we worked that into the figure. But yeah, needless to say, it was a pretty infuriating experience all around. But
Tell me about the moment you like pull out your roll from your pocket and hand over, like just count out the hundreds and like
just looking
fan
at
them on the desk.
They're just like astounded that I just happen to have this amount of cash on, as what is supposed to be a broke college student stands before them, who is unpaid for the previous semester, leading them to assume that I'm probably broke. But no, I just failed to be communicated with and was more than ready to make sure that this was taken care of. So, I mean, it was really just like two people who watched it, just like jaws dropped, kind of looking at me like, what the fuck? That's the only way I could describe it.
It's a great story.
I wanted them to say something. I just, they're like, oh, I gambled for this.
Yeah.
I was in Atlantic City all of winter break. That's why I didn't get your letter and just take the money.
It's funny. I have a similar story, not 3,500 though. When I was 21, I had no credit. I had been playing poker for 6 months or so. And so I had no credit, had no like any sort of financial history of anything, and decided like the Razor came out, the cell phone, the singular Razor.
Everybody had to have the Razor.
Had to have the Razor, right?
Razor.
Right. So like I go there, I sign up, and they're like, oh, it's a 500. They're like, I see just the look on their face. I remember it. They're like, it's a $500 deposit. They're like, sorry, it's a $500 deposit. And I'm just like, okay. Like I just pulled out a giant roll of cash. Like, here you go. Like, is that good? No big deal, right? Like I get it back in a year. Okay, cool. Let's go. And they're just like, nobody's ever paid the deposit. I'm like, yeah.
Being underestimated.
It is. It's nice. It's like, yeah, I'm the first. Remember me. So you took your semester off. That you're still your double senior years have not been completed as of yet. So what the hell happened in that semester you took off?
So the semester off went pretty well. We go back to Atlantic City, move back into the Tropicana. Borgata poker hadn't really built itself up yet. This was in the infancy of it, or I think this was right around the time they were opening. I think they opened in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. I could easily be mistaken. But it was right around then. So Tropicana was actually one of the bigger rooms in town, and Taj was just kind of dingy. So I would go over to Taj for all the tournaments, but stayed at the very lovely Tropicana Atlantic City. And I started grinding 1, 2, 2, 5, but I knew that tournaments were my calling, that it was more fun to me, that I held my discipline together better when I played cash. It was like, this is just money. Like I wasn't as worried about making a bad call as I was when I'm working for a stack all day and like feel the need to protect it. And I'm chasing this huge first place prize instead of just trying to win this single pot for 2 buy-ins, 4 buy-ins, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that all just kind of appealed to me. And it also just appealed to me that if you play a tournament, you have to battle with me. If we play cash, you can avoid me. But I always love the aspect of like knowing that you're going to have to beat everyone, you're going to have to battle with everyone. And that was all just kind of my motivation to grind more tournaments.
Why is that so meaningful to you? That
Very
You can't avoid me. We got to go.
because I'm very competitive and I don't like uh, I like to be pressured into like really battling and having to try to win all the chips, and the competitive side of me isn't as satisfied when I win 6 8 buy-ins in a cash game, whatever the most you can realistically win is. It never appealed to me quite as much as chasing huge first place prizes and feeling like you have to like go at it with everybody and really just like be ready to battle with like the end bosses and the sickos, because like by the time, yeah, I guess I don't want to jump too far ahead in this story, but like by the time I was 22, I was playing like the Bellagio 15Ks, and like just playing against all the people that I was watching on TV, and just like had to not be intimidated and learn how to battle with them and not be scared. And that was a lot of fun for me and where I kind of got a lot of my chops. So
How did it feel when you came up on the short end of the stick in these battles that are for, relatively high stakes, not just the prize pool, but also like, opportunity cost. You spend all day playing this tournament, nurturing the stack, battling, and then something goes horribly wrong. Did that ever get you down, or was it just motivation to do your best to improve?
that was, I definitely would have preferred the stability of cash and having much smaller swings, but it still was just still so much more motivating in tournament play. Like even though those spots are obviously demoralizing, you just have to have the right mindset and understand it as a big picture thing and know how much your hourly still is despite this bad beat for whatever equity. It it was something that it definitely took a little while to fully wrap my head around and embrace, especially when it's one thing to get used to it in the Atlantic City dailies, but when you start traveling the tour and it starts happening in 10Ks. I remember one stretch when I was 22 before I made my first WPT final table. I think I was 23 for my first WPT final table, and there were just multiple spots where I got it all in pre with aces for like 6, 8, 15 buy-ins or some starting stacks in 10Ks and just got tortured over and over and over and over. And that was really demoralizing. It's like, I do remember after like the third one that had happened within like a 6 month span, I remember just like staring out the window of a plane and like wondering if I could really handle it. And just knowing that there's still that like, however small the chance is that you're going to continue to take these beats, no matter how well you're playing, that there is that realistic chance that it's just going to happen again. You're going to put it all in with aces, like getting close to the money for like chip lead or close, and you're going to lose. And that was definitely something that took a while to really accept, but obviously like making my first final table at 23 and having like a $250,000 score was the motivation I needed to keep going.
That's what got you out of the funk. That's what
got me out of makeup, got back all the money from the aces hands and like all that stuff. Just it all felt okay again. And like after that point, it was much easier for me to accept like the horrendous beats. Especially the roughest always just felt like when you travel to somewhere for one tournament, just for the main event, and you get there and you play well and run up a stack and like take a bad beat. And, like you just kind of spend the whole flight home just wondering what could have been, thinking about what you could be doing differently and all that kind of stuff. But overall, within a couple of years of really starting my professional career at 21, I had a good mindset about it. And
where do you think that comes from?
Yeah. I mean, all the money that I had came from poker. Like, how can I be mad? I'm getting to play a game that I play for, that I love for a living. Like, that was surreal.
Yeah.
So, and it's not like at that point, it wasn't something where like everyone had a cousin or a brother who's done it, like, like there were the TV pros and that was it. And like, so I came up in an era where I had to like explain to people that you can be a professional poker player and that is an option and that you can have an edge in this game, and trying to explain people the difference, like really just having to explain the difference between table games and poker to people. Like, so
what's crazy, Matt, is I feel like you're a little insulated in your bubble, because like I still explain poker to people. Like even today, I think it's so like it's way more mainstream because people just laughed in your face back then. They were like, "Yeah, what?"
That's what I mean.
Okay, yeah.
I still find myself explaining it, but at the same time, it's like there's the level of it where people are just like, that's not a thing. Like at least now they're like, yeah, I've heard of someone being a professional poker player.
Right.
Like,
I just always cut it off.
For a while, blah blah blah, whatever. But like,
yeah, you could just be like, Google me, just Google me, Google my Hendon mob. The
funny thing is, I had to do that with the Memphis Police Department once to explain why I had 1,000 in cash on me.
How much? How many thousand?
Okay.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
What are you doing in Memphis, driving around with 60K in cash on you?
I final tabled the 5K circuit main event in Tunica. As I did
boy.
For a while. Then we were going through TSA, and I had been advised by someone who works for TSA to always keep cash on me and just like pull it out, show it to them.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't go well. And I still remember what this lady said to me. It's one of the funniest sentences that's ever been said to me. She goes, well, we would just wonder why you had so much cash on you, see as how there are banks available and such.
It's a fair question.
Wasn't even trying to be funny about it either. Exactly how it came out. And I managed to not just laugh in her face, but yeah, they decided to bring the Memphis PD in to question me. And then after a while, I legit just was like, if you Google my name, the first result that's going to come up is a list of all the poker tournaments that I've cashed in. And you'll see that a few days ago, I received this money in Harris Tunica.
Yeah.
And he looked it up and was like, all right, have a good day.
That's it.
He was over it. Like, as long as he knows it's not drug money, he doesn't care. Like, he knew I was like getting close to missing my flight because this had become like an hour-long ordeal.
That's the key then. So, right, if you ever want to make drug money, you just bink a tournament and then you funnel the drug money in and you just lie to the police, right? We have a plan. Bridging the gap from those couple of years before you moved out to Vegas, playing the 10Ks and 15Ks, what was that like? And you also mentioned makeup too, right? So I'm guessing you had to have been getting staked.
Yeah, because when there was a 10K every couple of weeks, I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't going to be able to be in my best shape when I was playing every prelim, every satellite. I was burnt out by the time I won a main event seat, if I did win a main event seat. But backtracking a bit, so this is a month after my 21st birthday when they tell me that I can't get back into school. I have $3,500 left because I gave $3,500 to the admissions office and didn't get into school anyway. So from there, I start grinding. Though there was like $100 plus 20 plus $100 add on a trop with like 10K guaranteed for first, no matter how crappy that made the payout structure for everyone else. There was one time it was like 10K for first, 1,500 for second, 800 for third. I was like, and I never managed to bank that one. Final tabled it a bunch, but that was an infuriating payout structure to deal with. Then, like a month and a half after I get back down to Atlantic City, there's the 300 plus 40 weekly Taj tournament. Was the biggest kind of weekly event in Atlantic City at that point. I final tabled it 1 week, and it's funny, I actually made two of my best friends in the world to this day in that single tournament. And
how did that come about?
One of them was one of my opponents. Actually, one of them I had met on my 21st birthday playing at Trop, playing 1-2, but he was there that night as well. And then another guy that I met at the table became one of my close friends after that. Like stayed at his place a bunch when I was down in the AC area after I moved out to Vegas and stuff, and we still talk.
Is it
Uh,
is it funny how
a lot of people know Katie Stone Capuccio.
Sure.
So her husband is one of my best friends.
Yeah.
He was underage playing 1-2 at Trop on my 21st birthday, and we met that day.
Nice.
So, all right. So I final tabled that Taj 340 probably like a month after I get down there, after being told I can't get back into school, or at least I'm going to be like 3 weeks late, which is not really going to go well with a bunch of 400 level classes. So I final table it, and I end up taking a chop, even though it was ridiculously soft and I didn't want to do it. We were like, I think 8 or 9 handed, and we were still using chip chop model back then, just to give you an idea of how ridiculous things were in 2004 or 2000. This is 2006 now. So I actually got more than I should have because we're using the chip chop model, and they offered me 7,000 when first is like 11 or 12, and I take it because I can triple my bankroll, and I just couldn't play with the pressure of knowing that my stack is worth twice what I have left in my roll. So I chopped it, and then I came back the following week and finished third for another like 3,500 or 4K. And then the WSOP circuit came to Caesars Atlantic City in March of 06. And I played the first 340 and snap busted, and then played a $75 sit and go to get into the 550 or whatever the rate was back then. And end up chopping that final table 5-handed with Matt Glantz, who was chip leader. And got 34K in that chop because it was a pretty big field and super top heavy payout structures back then. So that was kind of like the defining moment that was like, okay, this is actually about to become a career. And I followed that up by winning back-to-back seats in the main event, which was a 10K for the circuit back then. $200 rebuy, and I won both of them. So I sold one seat to Nicky Frangos, an old AC legend, and played the other one. And my roll's at like 50K after that series. So
not bad.
Suddenly things are looking up.
Fuck school.
Yeah, that's the point I got to. I still wanted to finish. It was just, it got to the point where like realistically, even my parents said, you know, if you want to take some time off from school to pursue this, we understand. And I think my dad said that when he didn't know that I was already in a semester off, like, because I just wasn't home. And I wasn't going to mention it because we were already fighting over the money I owed him for my car. So I wasn't going to bring up the whole, they didn't let me back in this semester, because he wasn't going to believe the story, no matter how true it was.
But you got to take care of the car situation once you have all your money for your bankroll, right?
The funny thing is, the first thing I did after that circuit series was over was drive up to my dad and just toss the 10K wrapper at him while he's sitting there watching TV after I walk in the door. And I was like, is that enough, or do I owe you more?
Oh, man.
And he knew I got busted with pot in college, so he was like, is this legitimate? Like, yeah,
are you gonna give it back if it's not, Dad?
His face when I said I won it in Atlantic City playing poker was pretty priceless too. I mean, he was concerned about me playing for real money when I was a broke college student, and it wasn't unwise for him to be a little concerned, because there was definitely a semester where I was eating a lot of ramen noodles and mac and cheese for the sake of having burned through my entire bankroll and all my
Gotta take your lumps, you know?
That's how you learn bankroll management, and how you learn to not suck and not play tournaments that you're not ready for.
Absolutely. I was going to say earlier before that, isn't it amazing how you mentioned earlier that like you were able to accept the bad and have a good mindset because everything in your life was because of poker and through poker. And that's a very easy thing to like look at and be like, oh yeah, that's the case, you know? And even so much as your best friends in life. And I think for me, pretty much everything in life I can attribute to poker in some way, shape, or form. It's just woven throughout my family, my friends, my professional contact, just everything. Pays for my car, my house, my way through life for all this time. It's like, holy shit, like this really came from like a 3K bankroll that I saved up when I was 19 years old. And that's just pretty insane to me.
Yeah, so when you put that all in perspective and manage to remember, I mean, the real trick is managing to remember to put it in those terms right after you take a bad beat and to remember that in the moment because it's easy to see on a normal day, but when you're really just getting your face bashed into the felt, it really helps to kind of take a step back and try to remember all of that.
For sure. And like if I lost everything today, I would be up so much money over the course of my career. You know, it's like, it's just, yeah, it's one thing too, doing taxes every year has always been this interesting exercise that teaches me the value of like big losses. It's like, I'm like going through my taxes and I'm like, sweet, minus 8K this day. Yeah. Like, let's get a couple more of these in there. So I don't have to
always say when I was on bullet 8 at Borgata 500 openers, it's like, oh, this is becoming a nice little tax write-off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm going to look back on this with fond memories. And that's the ironic part about it is it always feels so painful in the moment. And then when you look back on it with perspective, like 6 months later, you don't even remember what the fuck happened that day. Like, you're like, I don't even know what happened. I had a really bad day, but I have no idea how it happened.
Yeah, like that's an ugly line on the spreadsheet. I don't know what occurred there.
Yeah. Bet I felt like shit that day. All right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little easier now when like I know you have the same thing when you go back to your house and see your kids, or if you're playing online, you get to see them immediately after. Like that's what refocuses me. And like I'll be in the middle of like a rough Sunday session, and my son will like come running in and hop up on my lap and start pounding on my keyboard. And I'm just like, none of this matters. As long as he's fine, I'm fine.
And plus, I mean, as poker players, we tend to be sometimes we can be emotionally fragile. And it's like we're playing a card game for a living. We pay our way through life by playing cards. Like, how silly are we to be to get all bent out of shape over like a month-long break-even stretch? Or you know what I mean? It's like the all-time first world problem, breaking even because I play this silly card game for a living. So you move out to Vegas. Tell me about that. I'm guessing your dad was pumped.
That came a couple years later. So I spent my first I think it was like 2 years. Yeah. From 06 to 08, I stayed in the Atlantic City area, just a couple of the towns outside at different rental properties. And the action wasn't that huge in Atlantic City back then. Like I said, Borgata was still building itself up to become what it's become now. And it was mostly still just like mid-stake stuff going on, especially with the tournaments. They just didn't have that many big tournaments coming through. So if I wanted to play a lot of tournaments, I needed to move to Vegas. But within the first year after I was playing, I also started playing a lot online, mostly because I knew that Cliff Josephy was backing a lot of people for huge tournaments, but that he was going to want to see online results and hand histories from online tournaments. So obviously I had like an online background from college, but I had never played like big MTTs unless I satellited in. I would always just try to satellite into the Sunday majors, and other than that, I was playing like lowish mid stakes and like 75s at the highest.
Do you have a connection with? Is Johnny Bax, right? That was his screen name.
Yeah, I didn't really have a connection with him. Actually, when I was in college, he was one of the players that I had been watching, because I knew that it was like Shaniak, Bodog Ari, and him were like three of the players who were just like crushing back then. So
Is Shaniak Shane Rose or
Schlager.
Shane Schlager? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I get Schlager and Rose confused.
The funny thing is I've become pretty good friends with all three of them since then. And actually, like Mark Voss and Dustin Dirksen were two of the original like online beasts that would answer all my annoying questions and kind of
Yeah.
when I was in college. So when I was like 19 and 20, those are two of the guys that give a lot of my credit to. But so with Cliff, I had been like, just saying good luck, Cliff, blah blah blah. I knew he like recognized my name from chat. And then I started playing all the big tournaments, and within a couple months, I had won like the Wednesday 320 on Stars for like 30 or 40K, and won a couple of the $100 rebuys. So then I knew that like I could. I can't remember exactly how, but I was sure that I would be able to like get in touch with them one way or another and get a connection to them. So then they came down for like a series in Atlantic City. I think it was at Borgata.
And you say they, so it's like it's
Backs. He used to have a business partner named Eric Haber, who was referred to as Sheets.
Sheets. Got it.
So
Yeah.
Sheets and Backs a lot from the old school vernacular.
Yeah. I don't know much about MTTs, but I do know of Johnny Backs and I do know of Sheets.
Yeah. So I satellited in and won like this 6 satellite where I got like a seat to the 2500 5K and the 10K in the Borgata series. So I was still playing on my own action, but was firing all of them. And in the 5K, I had Sheets on my right, and he introduced himself, and then like Cliff came over, and was just like, "Hey, blah blah blah," and like introduced himself and was like, "Were you playing under a different name before or something? Because you came out of nowhere or playing great." I think he was implying that I was like playing under a different name before I was 21, but I was actually playing as All In at 420 before I was 21, and actually got caught by Full Tilt. They just like froze my account for 6 months my first birthday. Because I forgot that Stars was fine with you being 18 at that point, but Tilt wanted you to be 21. So I changed my birth year by 1. And then when I sent in documentation to cash out like an idiot because I forgot that I had lied to them, they were like, "Hey, we did get your documentation, but we did notice that your birth year is off."
You probably wouldn't have made that mistake if you'd have finished your last year of college, but
Exactly. I would have gone to a couple accounting classes and figured all this out. So he said, like, "Have you?" Because you came out of nowhere and are playing great. And I was just like, "Oh shit!" So then I end up playing against Cliff in the 10K at my starting table, just as a double test, and then like got their info, sent them hand histories, and they basically were just like, there were no like super high rollers back then. There was like the 25K WPT championship. And other than that, they didn't even have 25Ks. It was like 10K and 15K main events all over the place every month, every town. It was just like Biloxi has a 10K and AC has a 10K. And like, so my role was like 70 to 100K most of that year. But I also like understood bankroll management by that point and was like, I want to fire all these things. I thought I was just going to print millions of dollars and like get out of backing immediately. But it's not exactly how it worked out. But yeah, by the time I turned 22,
what did those backing arrangements look like back then? Like you just show up, roll up to a stop. They're like, "Here's 10K, go play."
Oh yeah, it was like they knew how easy all the tournaments were. So all it took was like, okay, let me see the hand history of the 100 rebuy and how you want it. And okay, you have a clue. Like you're making mistakes, but you have a clue. Here's 10K, here's 5K, here's 25K when the 25K comes around. And Bellagio started having tons of like Festa Lago was 15K. Like almost all of their main events was like 4-year were 15Ks, and I was playing all of them.
How much money are these guys carrying around to all the tournaments? Like backing all these kids? Like, yeah,
thousands. They had over 70 players at one point.
Holy shit!
I think the stable was like 40 around then.
Wow.
So, Yeah, I mean, they would just roll up to stops with $3, $4, $500,000.
Hand it out like candy. Good luck, boys. Go make us some money.
Yeah, it was pretty unreal. So that was kind of the genesis of my career, and then started grinding a ton, traveling all over the place. My first, like I said, I already kind of told part of the story of like when I first started traveling around, I was like playing really well, getting in these ridiculous spots, and then just getting screwed, and finally made up for it in November '07, I think. It was Boxwoods 10K World Poker Finals. This was a fun one because three-handed, I'm playing against Sohail Shamsuddin and Cornell Sempan. And like both are just kind of like a little bit crazy and blasterish at that point in their careers. And I was just waiting for spots and really liked my chances. By the way, I'm playing for like 3 times my net worth at least, like probably more. I'm trying to remember. Like, I think I still had, somewhere around 75 to 100K, and if I got third with my makeup factored in, I would get paid out 50. If I took second, I would get 150. And if I got first, I would get 375K because it was like 910 for first, and I had like 100 whatever makeup. So three-handed, I play a hand where I think it was just I opened I opened 5-6 of hearts on the button, so held defense from the big blind. Comes king 4 with 2 hearts. He checks. I think I check back. I might have c-bet and he called. Either way, I turn a flush.
Who's texting me?
And he check raises all in, and I snap. It's a paired board, but like this guy is insane, and he has king 9 with no flush draw, and it's like 2/3 of the chips in play. I knock him out, get 100,000 in cash after my backers paid, and am heads up for a WPT title if I hold. And he rivers a boat, and I yelled "Gah" so loud and with such vim, vigor, and passion that they decided that they should make it part of the opening montage for the World Poker Tour for years and years to come.
Oh,
And the
man.
funny thing is, I never even realized it until I made my second WPT final table, which wasn't for, I want to say like another 6 years or something. I final tabled Hard Rock Hollywood's Sherpa main event, and I'm standing backstage getting ready to walk out with the other final tablists, and we're watching the opening montage, and I see my "Gah!" Are you guys kidding me? Like, do I have to relive that right now? Like, what are you doing?
Oh, man, that's good stuff. I played with Mike McLean in at the Matrix, like probably 10 years or so ago. And like, again, I don't know very much about tournaments, but I know that he's like the face of despair at the WSOP.
The agony of defeat guy.
The agony of defeat guy.
I think it was the 04 main event. He got screwed for all the chips and just looked absolutely demoralized. And they're like, yes, let's frame that, put it on a wall, put it on every opening montage. Let's just torture that guy for the rest of his life.
Yeah, 10 years later, I'm playing 10 1/4. I sit down and I'm like, oh, you're Mike McLean. You're the agony of defeat guy. Like, it's like, this is just what he's known for forever just because they decided to put him on that montage.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. I didn't know if you even knew who Mike McLean was, so I wasn't going to make the reference, but I was basically like thinking to myself, did they really have to like Mike McLean me? Did they want me to be the WPT's agony of defeat guy? Because I don't need that title. Like, yep. I'm good. I love publicity and all, but I'll hard pass on that one if I have an option.
Yeah,
they didn't give me an option.
No option. You opted in when you signed away all of your rights.
They get to torture my life however they see fit.
Yeah. Poor Matt Affleck. He got the same treatment.
Oh, yeah.
Got the same treatment. And he came on the podcast actually. And I told him I'm not even going to ask you about it. You've talked about it so many times. I'm sure that like we're just going to skip over it. And because you're more than that one bad beat you took in the main event. Like you're more than that, man.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
He's a really great
Matt
guy.
Savage still breaks his balls about crying when it happened. He
Oh,
loves going
Savage.
after Adam Friedman way harder though.
I don't know that story. Adam Friedman.
Adam Friedman went in the, I want to say 04 main event as well. He got straight coolered, like king high flush versus ace high flush, and tried to find a fold under it. In hold'em. And he like crying calls, sees the nuts, literally cries.
It's a literal crying call.
He was crying and talking about how he's like, oh, I played perfect for 3 days and I get this is what I get, blah blah blah. Like
didn't Pearl Jammer had a breakdown like that too, didn't he?
I don't remember.
John Turner, I think he did. These poker players, we're a sensitive bunch.
I mean, you never know what's going on in someone's life. I know I stress out a lot more about hands when I'm like stressed about finances or like have other stuff going on. It's like just putting me on tilt before I even get to the table. Like it's harder to stay on an even keel when you're using poker as an escape, which is one of the reasons that I don't like to do it.
For sure. And Doyle talked about that a very long time ago in one of his books that he wrote. I don't think it was Super System. Maybe it was The Godfather of Poker. I can't remember, but one of those where his oldest daughter died and he just couldn't, for like 2 years, he just couldn't win. He couldn't do anything, you know? And it's like the macro, when things go bad in the macro and you're dealing with those sort of situations, you just can't play winning poker. Like you're also going to be miserable while you're playing poker as well.
Yeah, I kind of ignored that advice and it went really well last year, but in general, it's true. After I started saying it, I kind of remembered that I had a weird stretch last year where a friend of mine like called me to talk about something else, and like I think he was buying a piece of some big tournament, and he called me to talk about that, and then I told him that like one of the main things that was on my mind was my great nephew, who was 2 years he was 2 years old, lived in New Jersey, and had muscle cancer. And he had been in the hospital for a really long time, but then was on outpatient chemo and seemed to be doing better. They had taken like the trach that they had to put in out, and then unexpectedly the cancer like spread to his spinal fluid, and the doctor said that there was nothing they could do and that he only had like a week or two to live, and if they gave him radiation it was just going to like prolong his life a month or two, and it was just going to be like extraordinarily painful for him. So that was like during hardcore lockdown, like June of last year or like the end of May last year. And I had been really good about staying completely locked down, except like carefully shopping, whatever. And it was a weird spot because like it's the middle of lockdown. Like, what am I going to do but play online poker? Like, there's nothing else for me to really distract myself with, and nothing to like go out and do. I can't run events at that point for CSOP. And it was just kind of like a weird thing where one of my friends was like, you know, like you should probably just take some time off and like not play during the stretch. I was like, I mean, I appreciate it, and like I kind of agree, but like I have no other escape right now, and I kind of need it. And it propelled me to one of the most absurd heaters that I'd ever had. I won 4 tournaments in a week. 3 of them were like fairly big, including the biggest online win I've ever had. There was, I think one of them was like the ACR 215 daily for like 23K. So I had that conversation with him on Monday. I won that tournament on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, I won like a big 30 rebuy on WSOP.com for like 14K. Then there was like some like $100 hyper turbo for a little over 3K on Friday or Saturday. And then Sunday was the 2651 million on ACR. And I had actually like skipped the previous 2650 because I wasn't feeling that good about like my game and stuff. And obviously was in a much better place in terms of poker confidence, even though I was still obviously super stressed out about the family stuff, and ended up winning that for 240K, which is my biggest online score, but I have some live scores that were bigger. But yeah, it was kind of weird. It was still hard to put it out of my head, no matter how many tables I played or how much I tried to distract myself. But it was also really helpful in that it made it easier for me to take some time off and take a road trip out to the East Coast. We didn't want to fly in the middle of the pandemic, but we also weren't going to not be there for family in Jersey. So
Yeah.
my wife and I threw our 1-year-old in the back seat and drove cross country. And my nephew, when we were on our way out there, was like, "Hey, you mind if I just hop in the truck with you and move in with you because I want to get the hell out of New Jersey?" And I was like, "Well, can't really blame you there." So he had actually, that was really shitty too, because he got furloughed from his job like a few weeks before they found out that the cancer had spread, and then he and his girlfriend ended up.
It's his son.
His son, yeah. So, and then he and his girlfriend ended up breaking up shortly after the child passed too, which is pretty common in single child relationships. It's really hard to look at someone who reminds you so much of the child you lost. Like, so he and his girlfriend and the baby had actually lived with us for a little bit before and after Asher was born to help us with the transition, since they had just been through it too and could help us with all that. So he already knew that he liked it out here, and he was just like, "Yep, I think it's a high time I moved to Vegas and started a new life." And he's been living with us ever since.
Well, that's a lot. First and foremost, as we're both fathers, and that's, yeah, I can't imagine. Again, I was talking earlier about like first world problems of running bad and stuff like that. And like, this is the real pain, suffering, tragic nature of life. And it's just, you can't even really find the right words to approach the situation.
Yeah, I've been living with him for a year plus since then. I still haven't found the right words, so don't worry. It's not an easy spot to find the right words, and there are no real words. So
I think that's that's the case. There are no right words. You can't summon them. They don't exist.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons that St. Jude Children's Research Hospital went from being just one of my favorite charities to my number one charity that I'm like really trying to raise money for with Charity Series Poker, which we haven't even gotten into because we still just keep wandering off topic.
You've had a long and illustrious career, Matt. What was the question you asked me? How much time do I have? We got time. We'll make it to the CSOP.
In a world where a fish dog bets the flop, and you don't know what to do, one man,
Coach Brad Wilson,
has a surefire plan to neutralize flop leads and rip that dunk to shreds. Nuffle. Available now. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com/Nuffle. Rated R.
So where did we leave off in your story? Because we jumped around to your biggest online victory.
Yeah, that was more recent. We kind of left off on my
Boxwoods.
So
The GAW guy.
07. So, damn, '07.
we got quite a ways to go.
There, yeah, a lot of it just blurs together until Black Friday. There's just a lot of wandering around, making some other final tables, but I don't know.
Well, let's skip forward to Black Friday then.
Black Friday was interesting. I have been managing a small stable of mid-stakes grinders and actually got oddly lucky. The one player who had kind of won enough tournaments that I was staking him for fairly high stakes got 75, 80K in makeup. And then had a 70K score 2 weeks before Black Friday and happened to have it on stars instead of full tilt, so that a giant chunk of my net worth didn't end up being tied up in that. So Black Friday, like, I just kind of like was grateful for that. That was part of my first thought process about Black Friday. And it happened in April. I had just bought my house in Vegas in December 2010. I've been kind of backtracking. Spent another year in Atlantic City after that first huge score, but wanted to play all the big tournaments and was backed by Cliff after that. And just decided to move to Vegas in 2008, but then kind of wanted to make sure that I loved it and wanted to live there long term before I bought a house. Bought a house in December 2010, and then 4 months later, Black Friday hits. So, yeah, I mean, it sucked. And I didn't even rent it out because I was an idiot and was doing well enough that I was just like, I'll just let it sit there unoccupied. Or just had like friends like staying to watch my dog and like stuff like that. But I moved to Costa Rica for a while. That was one of the more fun experiences of my life, and definitely an interesting side benefit to Black Friday is that it kind of encouraged me to get out and travel more.
What was so interesting about Costa Rica?
It's a completely different way of life. It's a third world country where everyone just seems way happier than everyone in the US. And it changed my perspective a lot, just kind of seeing how poor and happy a lot of the people down there were in comparison to these like bitter, miserable, and entitled like poker pros who make 100K a year and are miserable that they don't make 300K a year. Just, I guess that's the best way to summarize like the kind of realization I had there. But it was also just an incredible place in terms of like nature and the tourist stuff that they had to do there. And I mean, it sucks that it's hurricaning there all through September during WCOOP, and you have electrical and Wi-Fi issues pretty frequently, but you get enough backup generators, you get in a building that has 2 different internet services, and you hope that a 7.6 earthquake doesn't hit. But then it really happened a couple of years later to me while I was there. So
holy cow.
Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. So then
you're taking my availability really to heart. let's take our time.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to summarize all this and try to remember exactly how it all happened. So every 3 months I had to leave Costa Rica, so I would like rent places there, but then like go play a tournament in the US as a family, fly back to Costa. Still traveled around a decent amount, and then I went down there 2 years later in 2011 and was in a 7.6 earthquake on the 14th floor of a 16-story building that was built to Costa Rican architect standards, not American architectural standards.
Are they better or worse, Matt?
I'm going to go ahead and imagine that third world countries are worse with this, but I mean, it is built in a place that's kind of used to having earthquakes, so you would think that they would be ready for it. It was 7.6, and the building was allegedly built to withstand an 8.0. It barely withstood a 7.6.
So no chance of an 8.0.
Right. I mean, like, our TV fell off the stand, like 10 liquor bottles fell and like slid their way up like a foot plus, all fell on the floor. Like the whole floor, like building was violently shaking a few feet back and forth. I was like just getting to I woke up to this in the middle of W Coop and was trying to figure out what the hell was going on, and then was like, I think I'm supposed to go near a doorway, and then I look, I can't find my flip-flops, and the doorway has nothing but alcohol and broken glass. And
so much for a doorway.
And I'm in like this panoramic room where it's like glass on two sides, and it was just really, really bad.
Yeah, this is a death trap.
My plan was to grab the air mattress and hold it on top, like on top of me while I lay on the couch, and hope that I don't die when the building snaps. That was kind of the point that I had gotten to and what I was about to do when it finally stopped shaking. And I was like, oh, we're going to live. Fantastic. So then there was a tsunami warning after that. So, but I didn't have a car, and I couldn't get my driver who lived inland to come out on his own. Reasonably so. I'm not going to argue with the guy. This doesn't seem to be worth the fare. So I decided, well, it was the next day, actually. I was kind of perturbed by it, but then kept playing W Coop. I took that day off from W Coop, but the next day woke up and fired. And we had some aftershock earthquakes, 5.5s and stuff, which are a lot more tame. It just makes you a little bit nervous about what level it might get to. There was like serious structural damage. Like there were giant cracks in the building and stuff after this was over with. Like, so we knew we were already like kind of not in the best shape to begin with after all that.
And for the podcast listener too, by the way, like the Richter scale, it scales up like exponentially, right? It's like an 8.0 is 10 times worse than a 7.0.
Right.
The difference between a 7.4 and an 8.0 is like there's a major difference there. Like 8.0 is way worse than 7.4.
Yeah. And like a 7.6, I think it ranks in like the top 5 or 10 worst earthquakes of the year worldwide, usually.
Wow, congrats.
Just to give you, I think that's what I read after this was all over with. But
what a shame. You've achieved all this success in life only to be undone by a massive earthquake that crushes you completely.
And the irony is, like, I literally was thinking about UIGEA and them and Black Friday as I'm like potentially about to meet my neighbor.
The final thoughts in your mind.
I legitimately thought about it while all this was going on. I was like, man, fuck those guys.
Fuck Sheldon Adelson.
It's brutal.
Who's Bill Fritz is the Tennessee senator. Yeah, because I'm from Tennessee, so I know the dude that did the UIGEA. It is, he's brought shame on my home state.
That rad bastard. So then in the middle of the aftershock earthquakes, I decided I am over Costa Rica. I was staying with friends anyway and just like chipping in. So it was real easy for me to just be like, all right, guys, I don't want to die. I'm out. So once I get down to 2 tables for my session, I sat there trying to figure out how I can get a last minute flight to Amsterdam to go stay with another friend out there. And just like, they wanted $3,500 for a direct flight, and I still don't know how this worked. I found a way to get a multi-way flight from Costa Rica to Amsterdam back to the U.S. for $1,300. I was like, how do you want $3,500 for this one flight, and you will reduce the price by $2,200 if I take these other 2 flights? It was a very strange deal.
The flying world is very strange. I've only been out of the country one time. It was to Canada to like set up a VPN after Black Friday. It was a horrible experience. I mean, just the worst. I've never been out of the country, so I didn't know how to deal with customs. They asked me like, what am I there for like 3 days? And I'm like, I don't know. I think I moved.
Something the
No,
over
I
there.
did. And I'm like the worst liar too. I'm like, I'm trying to move to Toronto. I'm just checking out the weather in January. It's not very good. They were very skeptical and pretty much almost didn't let me through. And so I was already terrified out of my mind. So I didn't actually get anything set up while I was in Canada. But I when I bought the flight, I remember it was like $1,000, and it went from like Atlanta to Toronto and back. But then I found another flight from like Huntsville, and it was like $300. But like there was like a layover in Atlanta on the way back, and I'm like, how does this doesn't make sense? Like it's the same plane and the same route. So I just like hit the layover and just like got off the plane and left there for $300. But like, yeah, I don't understand the business model of flights.
I've heard that that's a good hack, but that if you do it a bunch of times, like an airline will ban you.
Really?
Yeah. I've never done that one, but it's always tempting. I sure as hell would if I had seen the opportunity to. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. But you get this $1,300 like round trip flight to Amsterdam and all around. What happened with that?
Managed to get that for 1,300. I moved to Amsterdam that night. Just like stayed up till my 7 a.m. flight. I was out of there instantly and started staying with a friend in Amsterdam, like bouncing around to different EPTs. Because once you're in Europe, it's kind of like traveling around the States. There's not that much customs restrictions and stuff. So it's really easy to just get last minute flights that aren't that expensive or trains or whatever. And it was a hell of a lot of fun. I spent about 6 or 8 months in Europe straight and just kind of got to know Amsterdam pretty well. Was also just a lot of fun to be able to have that opportunity while I was still like young and have no kids, and life was a lot different back then.
Sure.
So then I ended up coming back to the US because I was dating someone, and kind of didn't want to be in Europe the entire time having a long distance relationship across the Atlantic. Then when I got back, that was sort of when I was ready to start the charity series of poker, because when I was 19 and in college and first started getting into the game, I was the vice president of Habitat for Humanity at my college and had done like a $10 rebuy fundraiser tournament, got like 4 or 5 tables in the dorms and got donated prizes so that all the money would go to Habitat. Raised about $1,000 and everyone had a blast. It was a lot of fun running it. So it was always in the back of my mind when I started playing poker for a living that I wanted to be able to, support food banks, Habitat for Humanity. Those were kind of my main ones. I knew that St. Jude was already doing an event or some events and wanted to eventually do some stuff with them as well. So I was sponsored by, starting around 2014-ish when I came back from Europe, I was sponsored by Borgata because they started their online poker site, didn't know what they were doing, wanted someone who was a Borgata reg and knew the players could be a kind of player liaison and help them figure out how to set up tournaments and some of the kind of nuanced differences between running live stuff and running online stuff. So I was also sponsored by Hard Rock Hollywood at the same time, just kind of leveraged my position with those two companies, and they were just amazing to us and hooked us up with basically like free food, free marketing, and like minimal or no rake, and would just help us set it up to where we were spending our own money on some of the operating costs. They were doing a lot of it for us, and like every dollar raised was going directly to Habitat or food banks without us even recouping event expenses.
Yeah, it's huge. That's great.
So
you founded CSOP? Like this is your baby?
So I founded it, and then Matt Savage and Mike Frazen, obviously Savage's executive tour director for the World Poker Tour. Mike Frazen's a businessman from Chicago that helped set up the J.B. Pritzker, who's now the governor of Illinois. He has an annual Holocaust Museum event that raises 7 figures, and he was kind of helping to set that up, and is a close friend of mine. He was actually the one that I was talking to on the phone that like told me I should take some time off, and I was like, no, I'm just going to go on this massive heater instead.
No, I'm just going to win everything instead. It's more fun.
Absolute distraction. Yeah. So started in 2014, spent 20 grand of my money and 15 grand of my friend's money over the course of the first 3 years. And we raised $350,000 for the charities in the first 12 events, 3 annual events the first 4 years. Then
give me a sense of like the feeling of accomplishment of like running one of these events, raising a bunch of money versus, playing in a tournament and, going deep or binking it.
I mean, I love like the adrenaline rush of winning tournaments, but it's also a selfish endeavor, obviously depending on what you do with the money. But it was always something that, like, as much fun as it was, there was a level of it that was unfulfilling, and that I knew that I wasn't using my knowledge, my ability, my intellect to do something that was really productive in the world. It wasn't benefiting people in any meaningful way. So it's definitely a lot more satisfying to me to do well as president and founder of the CSOP and make sure that every event is fun for everyone involved, represents the charity well, and raises a lot of money for the charity. So that's always been kind of a lot of fun for me, in that when I set this up, I thought it was just going to be this real easy thing where I just tell the casino to run this event and everyone's just going to show up. And I didn't realize how much it was going to take in terms of operations, marketing, learning how to do all these different things.
Savage didn't give you any hints or clues?
Savage answers all my questions. Savage wasn't like running it though. It was literally something where it was like, it's on,
no, like, is this hard to run a tournament series, Savage? Is this like we just put it up and they all come, right? That's how it works.
It'll be fine. So yeah, I mean, that actually kind of led to one of the best compliments I've ever gotten. Mac Verstandig, the lawyer, is not only like an amazing lawyer, but also just one of the smartest and like real sarcastic, dry, witty, funniest people I've met. And like when we first met and started talking about CSOP because we wanted him to help us, he's now on our board. But after one of the first meetings and after he looked into what we do and how everything came about, he asked me, he's like, you've had other people like helping like do all this, right? I was like, no, I did most of these things myself, and then just occasionally have like friends volunteer to do graphic design or have to like ask somebody else how to do this or that because I know that it more falls in their area of expertise. But like it was just kind of like a one-man show for the first few years when I was volunteering and just kind of trying to get like the guidance I needed from the outside. He like looked at me like dumbfounded. He's like, "You're a savant." I was like, did not expect that coming from like one of the smartest people I know. Like, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal, but when I look back and look at like the current operations list, like I'll get to that in a moment, but basically like working out of the office of my creative marketing company that has a full services team where I have one person doing web design, one person like setting up all the email marketing, another person doing all the social media, another person doing all of our graphic design. And as we streamline this and try to put all the pieces together and realize like everything we need to do, like we come up with this giant list of order of operations and everything that needs to be done. And I'm just like backtracking, thinking about like I had to kind of just learn how to do this from the ground up with like a little bit of mentorship from people here and there and people volunteering. Like I'm clueless on graphic design, so that was always something where we always needed volunteers or had to pay for services when we couldn't get volunteers. But for the most part, it was just kind of like trial and error and trying to figure out the best way to do all these things. So the first event we did was for 3 Square Food Bank at Planet Hollywood in 2014. And we netted. We didn't charge them any of our expenses. We paid like probably spent a couple grand on it. and all the setup costs and everything. But they netted $15,000 the first event, and I got a phone call from the CEO of the food bank thanking me. And I was like, well, to be honest, I appreciate your call, but I'm a little disappointed in myself because I thought we were going to raise at least 25,000. He laughed and called me crazy. And then the next year we raised 42,000 in the same event. And he called me again, and he told me that he no longer thought I was crazy. Now he wanted to set up a dinner to talk about how we can continue to grow this thing over the years.
Yeah. Now you got his attention. You're not crazy anymore, buddy. How much do you think you can make next year?
Yeah, exactly. So that's when I realized that we were really onto something. I mean, and this is all predicated on the generosity of the poker community. Obviously, like on the back end, I was doing everything myself, but like nothing happens if we don't have people in seats. We don't have sponsors paying for sponsorship packages, players firing off rebuys. That's the most fun part. I mean, most of our events are 300 or 500 if it's like a big gala with a dinner type event, and people just fire off $100 rebuys left and right. We had an entire table all in blind at one point. Like just 9 people all agreed, like firsthand all in. And we had a new chip leader, so that's kind of the best part for me, is knowing that we represented the charity well, set everything up properly, and people are just there having a good time, having some drinks, and firing off rebuy after rebuy.
Yeah, it's interesting that we live in such a cutthroat world that is filled with so many giving and empathetic human beings. Just so many good people that just live to give back. You know, I just had Andrew Barber on the podcast, and he said that like whenever he started playing for charity and like donating portions of his winnings to, I think it's REG, right?
Yeah.
It just changed everything. It was just like a whole paradigm shift of like, now he's excited to go play. Now he wants to win more money because he gets to donate more. And it just kind of changed everything from this sort of like, we only have our own self-interest in mind forever. And we always feel, I think, or most of us, I guess I can't speak for everyone, but we always feel a little bit like, this is a very selfish endeavor where I'm kind of just serving myself and we want to give back. And yeah, it's just great hearing these stories of you guys that like, yeah, you put your money where your mouth is and you invest not only your money, but your life force, right? Your time, your energy, your blood, your sweat, your tears. From somebody that's, you know, trying to grow a for-profit business, I can say that like growing any sort of business is a shit ton of work, and there's nobody to bail you out. There's nobody to teach you. Like you have to learn everything kind of on your own. It's trial by fire. And to do it for something that is raising money for something worthy and something worthwhile, man, that's just, it's an amazing story and highly, highly commendable.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
So things skyrocket eventually, right? Things kind of go stratospheric.
Yeah, that was, so like I said, I was a volunteer the first 4 years, 12 events, one at each place, raised $350K. And then in 2017, Negranu, it was the night of our Hard Rock Hollywood event.
Can we put this into like context here? That's one every 3 months for 3 years. And like, what's like the time commitment to run one of these guys?
It's probably 100 hours. So I was only putting in like 300 hours a year, which is enough that I could, you know, do it out of the kindness of my heart. And it didn't cut enough into my hours of playing poker. Plus I didn't have a kid. I had a lot more time on my hands in general. So that was just like kind of a fun thing for me to do on the side so that I feel like I'm doing more in general. And it was supposed to go on that way. I didn't necessarily have this like idea of blowing it up. It was something that I thought may eventually happen, but I was still kind of happy to continue playing for a living, like just donating a few hundred hours a year and some of my money to help set up the cost, because we weren't doing things to the extent that we are now, like with the St. Jude Gala, which was a massive undertaking. It's a lot different. So basically, that kind of segues into it well. So the St. Jude Gala had been going on for 5 years. Up to that point, it started Daniel Negreanu founded the event in Vegas around the same time. I think it was 2014 or 2013. And around the same time I'd started CSOP, and we were like friendly. I didn't know him that well, but then he texted me the night of the Sherpo event where we were doing an event for Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital in Florida. And the event had like 350 people. Everyone was posting about it. They were having a blast. And like, he saw all of it and he texted me. He's like, hey, I want you to help take over as chair for my St. Jude event. And I was like, okay, where do I sign? So that was kind of a turning point for CSOP, because I took that event on and was like, okay, I guess I could do 4 a year and chair this event. And my plan was to just keep doing that. And I talked to Negreanu. The first order of business for me was like, why aren't the Golden Knights sponsoring your event? Negreanu is like a super fan, has 16 season tickets, like considered buying 1% of from the owner before they became a team. And I was like, why aren't you trying to get, autographed jerseys, see if you can get player appearances, whatever you can get from them, cash, whatever it is. Like they have all the things we need. Like no matter how they want to support it, there's a way that we can make this work. And he contacted them and was like, hey, I talked to the Golden Knights and they want to sponsor the event, but they want to run their own charity poker tournaments too, and they don't know how. So I want to talk to you. And I grew up playing hockey. I'm a diehard hockey fan and already had season tickets for the Golden Knights and was just absolutely floored at this. Like, I have not been nervous. I can honestly say this. Like, I don't get nervous for final tables. If I get in my own head, it's only on break and when I'm away from the table. When I'm at a big final table, I have the ability to put out thoughts about the money, how life-changing it can be, how much I need a pay jump given my life situation, whatever it is, and just purely focus on the game, like apply everything I know, like put aside the nerves. I got straight nervous for this meeting. I was like, I can't believe an NHL team is asking me to do this, because one of my dreams was like, hey, I wish I could do an event for the Garden of Dreams Foundation for the New York Rangers, because that was the team I grew up watching. And like, that was like a pipe dream. I actually thought I had an in, did have an in, tried to use it, didn't work. I never got the call back, whatever, when we tried to do an event with Garden of Dreams. But they're actually coming to me like, hey, we need your help. It was absolutely surreal for me. And it was kind of a turning point, because when I met with them, they were like, all right, we want you to run our events, but we also have a sister foundation called Folded Flag Foundation. It does scholarships and grants for families of fallen soldiers. And that's the owner of the Golden Knights kind of like pet project and like his love, because he was in the Army and that's how he likes to give back. So it went from like, okay, well, we're doing these 3 events a year and spending 100 hours on each event, to, all right, now we have like 6 to 8 events a year. And oh, by the way, the Raiders are also talking to the Golden Knights and want to do a CSOP now too. I'm like, so in November 2019, we did a Vegas Golden Knights or a Raiders Foundation charity series poker event. And that's when I was like, all right, well, this is something that, it was something that like a lot of nonprofits need, because poker took over for golf as the #1 fundraiser for charity a few years back. And that's great. But at the same time, you don't have people who know this is how we should structure the event. We should, make it like have a little bit of play during the rebuy hour, make it a turbo after that. You like the St. Jude event before I got there, I don't think that they had Negreanu do the structure, or he did not look closely enough at it. They still talk about the one event that ended at 3:30 in the morning. I was just like, oh man, that is brutal. And that was also one of the things is like, I didn't realize how effective our other events were, but a lot of it comes from Borgata and Hard Rock Hollywood being amazing to me, and giving us sweetheart deals, not charging us for a lot of stuff they would usually charge thousands of dollars for. But when we started looking at other charity events and the effectiveness of it, it just wasn't there. They're spending on like B-list celebrities flying in, and like they're not like paying them appearance fees, but like the costs add up pretty quickly when you have to put up like two people for a flight, a hotel for 2 nights, like, and a lot of things just weren't worth it. And that's kind of become my job, is to go in for existing events and act as a consultant and figure out where we should be spending, where we need to cut spending. And so we actually doubled the revenue of that St. Jude event. The first time I ran it, I didn't get involved until a few weeks before it in 2017, and just kind of wanted to like get the feel of the event and see how it went. And they raised 180 grand, but it's a pretty expensive event to run when you're doing 250, like dinner for 250 at a casino. Even when you're getting really good deals and discounts and things, like the bill adds up pretty quickly. So I was very proud that the first time I was event chair for it, we raised 359,000, and we actually had the next iteration of that event scheduled for, I think it was April 4th, 2020, like 1 month after lockdown got serious. And really kind of sad that that didn't come to fruition, because we put a ton of work in. But now we're looking at, let me look at the calendar. I want to say it's March or May 24th, if that's a Saturday. Next year, we're going to have that event. It's looking like, yeah, Saturday, May 21st is going to be the St. Jude Against All Odds Gala. They're also doing a golf portion of it on Friday the 20th now. New twist we're working on to kind of help us get from 360K to 500K and eventually $1 million with that event alone.
It's going to be sick, man. I see the effects of lockdown now as it relates to how you spend your energy, because I assume there's been no charity series of poker events since lockdown started, right? Has it just been like blanked?
Yeah, we actually ran a couple online events. There was one event we ran last year when things started to get better before it got worse again, and we were less comfortable running live events. But we did a Leukemia Lymphoma Society event that smashed its expectations, raised over 40K its first event, awarded a 10K main event seat. And we've done a couple of St. Jude online events through Faded Spade as well. So that's something that I want to probably vertically integrate on eventually, and have CSOP's own online poker site, so that these charities will have an easier time just kind of having one-stop shopping. Like our whole goal is vertical integration in everything. We're getting a software to, right now we use GiveSmart, which is a common charity silent auction software that also works for selling rebuys and add-ons and tickets for events and things. We're trying to create our own version of that will not only be more geared toward our poker purposes and needs, but also cut the credit card processing fees, because it's 3.5 with GiveSmart, and with Stripe, we can link Stripe directly to the accounts now, and we'll be able to get it down to 2.2 processing fees for nonprofits for Visa and MasterCard, and then plan on buying 20 tables, 6,000 chips, and eventually running an online poker site, so that we just don't even have to hire anyone, ask anyone else for anything, to be able to provide these services for our beneficiaries.
Awesome, man. That sounds really cool and really exciting. Hopefully we get back to some semblance of normality in the next yearish, 6 months to a year. Funny you mentioned Faded Spade. Tom Wheaton is going to be coming on to the podcast tomorrow afternoon, so that episode will probably be released directly after this one.
Nice. Tell him I said hi.
I will. I'll tell him you said what's up. And we've skipped over a lot, and like I sometimes happens on this show, or is actually prone to happen, is I asked one question, and that question took like an hour and a half, because like I said, your rich and illustrious poker journey And we skipped over many, many years, right? We probably could have done many more hours. So here at the end,
Had a kid too. I better put that in there before I get in trouble.
you had a kid. You did. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And let's, if you would like, we can book a round 2 for some time in the near future, and we can kind of circle back and ask more of these questions that I have. I'm sure the audience would love it. But before we part ways, I will ask a couple lightning round questions, and then you can direct people to the CSOP in case they want to be involved. So, yeah, if you could wave a magic wand, change one thing about poker, what would you change?
I just heard Norman Chad in my head yelling, "Re-entries! Kill re-entry!" That was weird. Why is my brain going there? Anyway.
I don't know. Norman Chad, he's a character. As somebody that has never interacted with Norman Chad, I think the first thing that he said to me was like, I can't remember. It was like in an email, and it was something along the lines of, "I don't want to go on your second-rate stupid poker podcast." I was like, damn, that's pretty hardcore, Norman. And then afterwards, he's like,
"Yeah, on it,
huh?"
I figured he would say that, but then get on it.
Hey, he did get on it. Of course he did. Like that. He's like, "I was just kidding." Like, I get that all the time. People don't understand I'm joking. I'm like, because there's no context to the joke. Like, we didn't go from one place to another. We've never met each other. Now I just assume he's always joking, no matter how horrible the things he says is.
Yeah, he stopped by one of my first Twitch streams to like talk some smack. Like, I didn't even know he really gave a crap who I was, and I was like, "Wait, why are you stopping by my Twitch stream? Thank you." I was honored, even though he was breaking my balls.
That's what he does. That's what he does these days. So getting rid of the reentries, you can go straight to Matt Savage and thank him for the reentry situation in MTTs. Although I feel like eventually somebody would have stumbled upon it.
I mean, I'm just going to go with cheating. I would have to say that collusion, chip dumping, the real-time simulator stuff, like, it's fine to study with simulators, but using real-time assistance is like the death of online poker.
Agreed.
I will go with cheating in general as being the one thing I wish I could change. But I'd like to think that it's not in every game and that it's less common than we might think. But I might be being overly optimistic and hoping that. I know there's plenty going on, obviously.
I think there's plenty going on, but I also think that there's still, like, the games are still beatable, and there's still win rate to be had, and very high win rates, even at the highest stakes. My private coaching students play in those streets, and the games are still good, although, there are times where people will sort of tank on a trivial decision that's a little bit foreign, and, the question marks always start popping up in my head. Like, the main edge that I've had in cash games all these years is, like, I'm really good when things get dirty and deep in the decision tree. I'm good at problem solving, logicking my way through a hand, and sometimes people start tanking in spots that are like, shouldn't really be tanking spots, but are also kind of foreign. And my mind immediately goes to, like, are they getting some kind of assistance? And this basically, like, eliminates my edge, or, like, dulls it substantially if they can just look something up and, I don't know what to do here, but I've got a guide that will show me the way.
Yeah, it's like I'm up millions in this game, but how many millions would I be up if I had never gotten cheated once? I'd like to think it wasn't a lot more, but then I find out more and more sickos are multi-accounting MTTs, and I watch my win rate dropping as they do more and more accounts.
I will say that I think multi-accounting is a big issue, and I'm not in the MTT streets. I've just heard through the grapevine that it's a thing that is pretty common practice.
Yep. Unfortunately true. At least it's slightly less malicious than most forms of cheating, but still quite scummy and taking away win rates from people who are being honest and playing one account like they're supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, and I know that Katie Stone's talked about it on Twitter some, but yeah, it's I don't know. I have no idea how to police it. I have no idea what even is involved in multi-accounting, like VPN wise, or how they can crack down at real-time assistance is another thing I have no idea how to police. Because what do you do? Like how do you go about doing such a thing? All right, so if you could erect a billboard, every poker player's got to drive past on their way to the casino. What does Matt Stout's billboard say?
That every poker player has.
Besides, don't cheat, assholes.
Yeah, naturally there's that. I'm just trying to figure out how I would encourage people to support their favorite charity, whether it's Charity Series of Poker, St. Jude, Three Square Food Bank, whatever. Like, I would definitely encourage people to remember how grateful they are to be able to play the game that we play and to try to give them extra motivation. A lot of times I definitely will find that, CSOP motivates me to try in general, because the more you have, the more you can give back. And it's definitely been a lot of fun being able to use this as my outlet and not have to do something outside of the poker community, and to just get to see this, like, the best side of everybody who comes out to these events. Because obviously you're dealing with like the good humans to begin with in the poker community when they're showing up for an event that obviously, like, even though there's a 10K main event seat, they know that we're going to take in $50,000-$60,000, and most of the money's going to the food bank. So there are some like pretty significant prizes in our events, but they're also showing up there out of the goodness of their hearts, knowing that their ROI is going to be negative no matter how well they play. So I get to see not only some of like the best humans in the poker community, but get to see their best side where they're out letting loose, having fun, not having to take an event so seriously. Especially our Three Square Food Bank event in the middle of the World Series of Poker during one of the flights of the main event has always been like my opportunity to kind of remind myself like why I play this game, why I enjoy it so much, and just kind of try to take a break from taking it so seriously and being so stressed out, making sure that I make every decision I can make perfectly in every bracelet event. Then I finally just get to have a few drinks and like enjoy the game
and have fun. And I mean, it sounds like a fun journey. You've built up this business that's now sponsored by, professional sports organizations in the place where you live, where you have season tickets. I mean, that's really amazing. Seeing this idea grow to that scale, and I'm excited to see what happens next, back when the lights come back on in the world. And
for sure, November 5th and 6th, we're trying to have 2 events during the main event: Three Square Food Bank and Families for Effective Autism Treatment, a local autism charity.
Awesome,
so
man.
Hopefully the lights will be on in time for that.
There you go. So if you're in town during the WSOP, where can the Chasing Poker Greatness listener find more information about you and the CSOP?
CharitySeriesOfPoker.org or the CSOP on Twitter. I think it's the CSOP on Instagram as well. Might just be Charity Series of Poker. I don't go on Instagram. Like I said, I'm very fortunate to have like built this out to the point where we have a board of directors full of people helping me out, and SKC Group is an absolutely amazing full services creative marketing company that just donates services and does everything for us because they are the best.
Yeah, your social marketing team right now is like, that motherfucker can't even plug us on Instagram one time. We don't ask for much, but he can't plug us on Instagram. Come on, Matt.
Yeah, I'm pretty bad at the gram. Never been my thing. I do Facebook and Twitters. All right, it is Charity Series of Poker on Instagram.
All right, Charity Series of Poker on Instagram.
The CSOP on Twitter.
There you go. Thank you very much.
No problem. I am Matt Stout Poker on Twitter, since you asked about me as well, even though I care a lot more that people follow the Charity Series of Poker.
For sure. And can they click through from your Twitter account to CSOP?
Yes, I have it in my profile that I'm president and founder of the CSOP.
There you go. So you can find it there. Thank you very much for your time and your energy, man. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Let's do it again in the near future. Best of luck on the grind. Win a couple more tournaments before November rolls around.
Yep. Quick shout out to my son Asher and my wife Brittany, since I didn't get to talk enough about them because I haven't been talking about my recent life. We hit the 2-hour mark a little bit early, so probably best if we schedule a part 2. So then we can talk more about their amazing impact on my life too.
Absolutely. And to be fair, I release 3 podcasts a week, so I have a never-ending need for more and more content.
We'll find the time. Let's book something after the World Series and get a round 2 on the books.
Yes, sir. Have a good rest of your day, man.
You too, man. Take care. Thanks. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter, join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter @CPG Podcast.